Welcome back to part 23 of Midtown Menace 3, and in this part we are going to be concluding, finally, the last 5 Blitz races that are left to do in the likes of Midtown Menace 3, because then after this is the checkpoint races, which hopefully will be a lot better than this. Somehow, though, I get a bad feeling it won't be, but we don't know yet. So this is definitely going to be the longest part of the Washington Blitz races, as you will see why with the last one. Anyways, so in the last 2 parts I was talking about stories with consoles. And, well, if you're wondering about anything else, well, there isn't really much of a story to it. Sort of. I guess maybe the Xbox 360 I own is a bit of an interesting story. But not so much in a opening, broken, modded way like the PS2, just much different.
I've had, and this is only a very recent. I've only ever broken one PlayStation 1, and I've killed an Xbox 360 and I've killed a PS3.
I have broken a PS1 unintentionally as a child, and I've had a 360 die on me before.
It wasn't necessarily intentional, but I bought a Japanese spec PlayStation 1 just so I could play a handful of imported games that I absolutely loved.
Also, here's like an interesting section with where you kind of have these checkpoints in like a parking lot. Kind of screwed it up, so I just kind of reversed through them. Still worked. Whatever.
Yeah. I completely forgot. I tried to make a level in SRC where basically you had to race around in a park.
Get cut off.
Skyline Racing concept parking lot level. I tried to make one. It didn't go so well. We scrapped that idea.
Well, you pretty much scrapped the game, so...
Well, I mean, I went through and I played it fairly recently, and it's like, this isn't that bad. It certainly runs a little bit better since I got a PC upgrade, but...
Yes.
I mean, all you gotta do is just take all of the assets and stuff them into Unity, and then you would basically have a racing game that's almost 80% done. All the levels are there, all the music's there, all the cars, tuning up, everything is basically there. And most of the scripts we used for tuning and cheat codes can probably be ported over to C# with relative ease.
Fair enough. That's good news. But yeah, so yeah, this one, by the way, since I haven't really been talking about what I think about the races, because of console console talk, which, to be fair, you know, sometimes I get carried away, and that happens.
I'm happy for you, kid. Can't you tell?
But, you know, I think that, to be fair, I think conversation like that sometimes can be interesting for videos, because it kind of, because it can be a combination of, it's interesting, people might find it interesting to listen to, and maybe some people could even relate in certain manners. So, you know, I think that's always a good thing. When you've got something going and you can talk about it, it tends to work out very well. And I think that's kind of why I like post-commentary, because my mind, since my mind isn't as focused on the game, I can kind of tend to concentrate more on things I like to talk about to kind of, you know, make it more conversational. But, you know, live commentary I also like for the simple fact of the reactions are genuine.
Indeed, though it does kind of... It makes me want to have snarky comments about how, oh, you're doing this foreshadowing, even though you know exactly how it's going to end because you played it.
Yeah.
That was the one thing, is trying to fake genuine reactions is a little...
Yeah, it's just not possible with post-commentary.
But if you had someone else if you had somebody else recording it, and then they showed it to you, but they weren't doing any of the talking, like, say, you have someone who's really good with games, but absolutely shit on camera, that could totally work. It'd be just like, oh yeah, this guy's playing the game, but everybody else is kind of doing their thing. You could totally get away with doing that, and it would probably work fairly well, because it'd be genuine reactions from the commentators.
Yeah, pretty much. It also kind of reminds me, like, in terms of live commentary, I think Weirdo, I think, really summed it up well. He really likes the idea when it comes to duo commentaries where you got one guy who is mostly going into something blind and doesn't really know much about it, and then there's another person who pretty much knows nearly everything about it.
That sounds an awful lot like what Angel and I did with Racing Lagoon.
Yeah, he didn't know as much, and you kind of knew a lot, so...
I've only been playing the game since I was in high school, and it's been, what?
Because, you know, Japanese PS1, you know. No
Yeah, it's
biggie.
only been like 6 years. I've only played through it at least 15 times.
Yeah. I actually need to play through Racing Lagoon myself at some point.
That would be an amazing stream game.
I really should stream that, probably. I probably will at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, though, basically... anyways, back to what I was going to say about my 360 story. So, you know, I did get I originally had a standard 360 Pro, which was the one with a 20 gigabyte hard drive, because 2007, woo. Back as a Christmas gift, which was and it was really great. It was actually, I still remember this fondly well. It was very amusing. It was the last Christmas gift I opened that Christmas, and there was a giant box there for me, and I was like, "What is this?" It looked massive, and I was like, "Oh, this could be interesting." So I opened it up, and it's the box to like a CD radio player. And then, and you know, even 2007 me would have been really happy with that, because I liked those things. I still do. I don't have one, but I still wouldn't mind having one for whatever sake. Probably should get one that you can plug a smartphone into. But basically though, what it actually turned out was they told me to just open it right there, and I was like, okay. Which, you know, seemed a bit weird to me, because they usually wouldn't do particularly like that. But what ended up being the reason for that, though, was there was another box wrapped up inside there. So
I'm familiar with this trick. I've done it before to a few of my friends.
Yes, so I opened up that box. Since there was no CD radio player in there, and that box wrapped up in there was an Xbox 360.
That sounds like an amazing way to do it.
Yeah,
I remember years ago.
I was so happy as a kid. It was because I was really wanting one of those at the time. Funny thing is, about 2 years later, when I got a PS3, they didn't do that. They just had the box. Like, I saw like things that had like a game size, and they just said, "Don't open those yet." They said, they said, "Wait, open the bigger one first." And then it kind of hit me like that. I was like, it has to be a PS3 or something. Lo and behold, it's a PS3, which is not plugged in right now. It's sitting on the top shelf to the left of where I am right now. Still works, though.
I think you get, like, one use out of that gag before the kid starts to catch on and goes, wait a minute. I remember this. You did something. There's something in it.
Yeah.
So you have to really make it count. I remember my grandfather did something similar back when the Video Now thing was a legitimate...
God, I remember that.
Yeah, I unearthed that the other day. I was cleaning out a bunch of boxes, and I found it, and I'm like, wow, you can probably throw batteries in this thing and it would still work.
I probably imagine it would work.
Wow, the early 2000s, back when none of us had iPods.
Yeah, the early 2000s was a weird time.
Yeah, I vividly remember that ketchup that was green and purple.
Yeah, oh, God, I remember that, too. They sold it over here as well.
Jesus.
It was such a weird time. There were all these zany ideas. There was these things that are like still, you could tell it still had that very 90s feel, but it was still just trying to hold on for a little bit longer, basically. But yeah, so basically back to 360. I had that in 2007. It red ringed in April 2009, and I remember that specifically because I had on my old Facebook, which is long gone. I had posted the day it red ringed, and I remembered the date said April 2009. So I went a couple months without using it. Then my dad decided to get it fixed by someone, and you know they kind of worked. It kind of did an okay job. The only problem was it only lasted about 2 months, and there was sometimes I would turn it on, and it would just randomly red ring again, but didn't actually. But I turned it back off, and it was fine. And then turning it back on, and then after 2 months, it just red rings permanently and wouldn't turn itself back on. So then came he got it fixed one last time, and what the last person did was crank the fan up to run very strong, which in turn made the console very loud. And I fondly remember this. The last game I was playing on that 360 at the time was Forza Motorsport 3, because we had rented it. And It was at a from a Blockbuster that used to, because that was still a thing in 2009 for at least a couple more years, and it was actually really cool though, because the Blockbuster actually kept the second disc, so I could install all the other cars and whatnot, so I wasn't like missing out on any of that. So that was really cool. I like that they did that.
We didn't actually have a Blockbuster when I was a kid. We had a movie gallery, but that was about it. And I remember going there and renting Ridge Racer 5 and not liking it because I couldn't get used to the controls. But those were still some good times. I remember I had to track down a copy of that game after a while.
Also, a nice little shortcut I did there.
Oh yeah, that was nice. That was absolutely ace. But I had to play that game again because it's like, man, I remember this game being kind of frustrating, and then I sat down, started playing it again, and I'm like, all right, this game's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I had played it briefly because I had rented it. This was when I was still living in Burlington. We had Blockbusters in Burlington, but we didn't go to them because we lived closer to another rental store that actually specialized more in video games. It was originally called Microplay for a number of years. Then I think it got bought out by another owner, and the owner still wanted to keep it as a game store. And it's now known as Game Haven, and I believe that store is still around to this day. So it's more like a proper gaming store. So for like retro games and stuff, for like collecting and whatnot. And I think you can still rent games there too, including the older games. I think they still have that as a service, which is really cool. But basically though, we used to do that, and I remember getting Ridge Racer 5, and yeah, I wasn't really liking it as much. But yeah, basically that was the last game I played on it, because what I remember seeing on the screen, I vividly remember it. I was about to start a race, all was fine, and then the screen looked like it had massively corrupted. All these crazy graphics were flying everywhere. The screen was gone. It was a creepy thing. And then when I turned it back on, red ring.
Rip.
So for quite a number of years, that was the end of my 360, because I wanted to get a PS3 by that point, because I was so sick of the thing just dying constantly, and so was my dad. My dad was just done with it. He was like, I can't keep doing this for you. So
my 360 story was a little bit less like that. It was more along the lines of I was playing it for a while, and then I stopped, and I went back to try and play it again, and it just red ringed. So they threw that out, and I didn't have a 360 for a while, and I really missed it because I had Import Tuner Challenge, and that was kind of my go-to game.
I really wanted that game so badly when I first got to 360. We could never find it, though. We couldn't find it no matter where we went. So, yeah.
Yeah. I wound up, I scored a used copy of it for like $12 at GameStop when I was up there with a friend of mine one day. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I remember this game. This was supposed to be like TXR for Xbox. And so he's like, yeah, whatever. So I bought it, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna play this. Yeah, he didn't care. He wanted BioShock too.
Yeah. So yeah, basically though, many years go on, and I was kind of looking back at some of the games. This was like 2016. I was looking back at some of the games that are on it, and like, I missed a lot of good opportunities for certain games or just whatnot, and I really kind of want to get a 360 just so I can play it again. Also, before I get to that, here's the reason why this part is so much longer. Notice they give you 12 minutes and 40 seconds to go through 54 checkpoints scattered throughout the city.
Fuck me, even I wasn't that evil when designing levels.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have to do this without damaging the car. If you damage it completely, you have to start all over again.
Yeah, I'm starting to see why this game is taking a bit long to finish recording, because this just screams evil.
I can see why this was DLC. This particular one is DLC. Like, I can see why. But yeah, basically though, back to what I was on. So, I kind of wanted to get a 360 again, and basically what I ended up doing was I looked on Kijiji, which is like Canada's local version of Craigslist with a much better layout, I must be honest. And, you know, there's quite a few people who sell 360s in my city very often because, you know, there's a lot of people who are either A, just don't play it anymore, or B, want to get the money so they can get an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4 or something like that. And, you know, basically I found a guy who had a 360 in it's a 360 Slim in pretty damn good condition. Unfortunately, it didn't come with a hard drive. I still don't have a proper built-in hard drive for it. I really should get one at some point. And it had a whole bunch of games, and I'm the kind of guy who likes to purposely sometimes start with a low offer price, because my idea is, you know, start low and then we kind of slowly start working up to, you know, what's that magic number.
Yeah, lowballing.
Yeah, lowballing, because I know I don't ever try to purposely lowball, because my idea is start low and then eventually work our way up till we find the best deal. So I offered like $70 because you know, there were people that were selling 360s on Kijiji for $70 that came with much fewer games. And I was thinking in my head, okay, there's no way this guy is going to accept 70, but let's just throw it out there. Amazingly, he accepted the deal. He thought it was good.
Hey, there you go.
So the time goes by, and we're getting everything set up. The very day I'm supposed to get it, he gets concerned because he couldn't turn on the console.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So now me being a bit knowledgeable, I know that 360s have a big external power brick. So I was like, "Is there a light on it?" He said, "No." And I was thinking, okay, I can. Well, needs a new power supply. I can just get that eventually myself. So, and I you know, I persuaded him to say, like, look, just I'll work without it for now. I would still really like this offer, this 360, because you've given me a very good offer for it. And, you know, I was able to eventually persuade him into doing so, and I got the console from him. And, you know, a lot of the games he had were just games I could care less about. Just a bunch of sports games and other shooter stuff that I have zero interest in, right? So on the day I got that, I went to some game stores and I just traded a whole bunch of the games in, and I got more money than I was expecting for those. Like, the one store that I traded most of those games in, they gave me $90 in store credit for it.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
I got like 20 for trading in my PSP collection. I regret doing that.
Yeah, they gave me. This wasn't like a GameStop or anything. This was a game, like a sort of retro game store. So, and I knew to go there because they were going to offer me better value. I mean, they have a ton of 360 games there, but I knew going to them would be a smart idea. So basically, though, I went there, I got $90 store credit, and I just bought a bunch of racing games and other stuff that I would care to play on the 360 with. And I got Forza 2 and Forza 3. I didn't get Forza 4 because they only had the Essentials Edition, and I did not want that because the Essentials Edition lacks a second disc to have the extra cars in it, and I was like, nope, I don't want that. So basically the idea was, no, get that away. And they didn't have it, so, you know, I went for a little while without Forza 4. So yeah, you know, because I wanted to make sure the consoles at least still worked, I went to another store and I asked, is there any way I can at least, I just got this from a deal, is there any way I can at least test? And he's saying it wouldn't turn on. Can I just check to make sure it's just a power supply issue? So they were able to, you know, they had a 360 display power with, you know, power. So they just temporarily unplugged it so I could power it on, and, you know, I found out there that it's still powered on and still worked, so that was good. I bought an HDMI cable because the guy forgot to give me a fucking video cable for the thing.
Sure.
Which is, you know, but whatever. But which to me was like, whatever, I'll just get an HDMI cable anyways. Which I did. And I remember that same day, I also got I found a thing at a store which I thought was pretty cool. It was an adapter, because the 360 power supply from the original to the Slim has a different connector. And apparently there's a few companies have made adapters which can convert that that plug so you could use it on a Slim, which I thought was pretty cool. So I was thinking in my head, okay, I'll leave this in the package for now, and I'll just, once I get a better power supply, one that works, I'll just use that maybe if it's so necessary. So that was kind of how it was. So I finally came home. I had my new games I had my 360. I was like, all right, well, I have it now. Let's just try to put it in a setup for when it would actually work. I started putting that power supply into the wall, and then I noticed something on it. A light.
What?
There was a light on the power supply. I was like, okay, there's no way this is gonna work. I plug it in, lo and behold, it worked.
And you're just like, damn.
I was like, damn. Yeah. So and if I check now, let me quickly check behind. Yep, that light is still on now, about a year later.
Damn, I'd say you got a pretty good deal with that.
Yeah, it was an incredible deal. I was very lucky. I was very thankful. I said thank you so much to the guy, and he seemed like he could tell. I think I could tell the reason he was okay with the offer is because it seemed like he looked like the kind of guy who was doing pretty well for himself. So I think with his mind, it was more of, I don't care if you give me this deal. I just don't use it anyways, and I just want someone else to enjoy it. So I think that was the reason. And so, so I've had that 360 ever since. Still don't have a hard drive for it. So I just use a portable 320 gig hard drive, which works. It's just a couple games don't work with it particularly. I can't save any replays in the Forza games, which is really annoying. And I also can't play I can't play an updated version of Burnout Paradise on it, because I got that when it was Xbox Live Gold for free game, because they did that as a coincidental release because of it going now having backwards compatibility support on Xbox One, and I cannot play an updated version of the game because it requires a hard drive.
Jesus, I remember I bought Paradise when it was new.
It's the only game in my collection that does that.
That's utterly bizarre.
Yeah. It's silly too, because in my head it's like, why can't the console just recognize it as a hard drive? It just thinks it's a USB drive. Which is the problem. If it recognized it as a hard drive, I would not have this problem. So, it is what it is. I'll eventually get a hard drive for it, but it's not the biggest issue right now anyways.
Minor problem. You'll come up with a solution later.
Yeah. So I've since, I got a few more games since getting it the first time. I did find a copy of Import Tuner Challenge. It was a bit pricey. It was like $30, which is a bit much, but I later found out the reason it was sold for $38 was because the game was near mint. And to be fair, the game is hard to find, so I think the idea was, this game isn't very common, and it's pretty much near mint, so it escalates the value of the game. Because it's complete in box anyways. Get case and manual as well. So I did eventually get Import Tuner Challenge, which I'm very happy I have. I will definitely, of course, be doing videos of that somewhere down the road. I did actually get Need for Speed Most Wanted, the 360 original 05 version for the 360, which was the version I always wanted to play when I knew about it, and never got the chance to. But now that I have it, I can play it. I need to get that disc resurfaced though. If for some reason it runs louder in the console than any other game I have. I don't know why. I think it just needs to be resurfaced. I mean, I installed it to that portable hard drive, so I don't have to worry about it making all that racket. But I would kind of still like to be able to resurface it, so when I plug it in, that initial bit of noise just doesn't happen. It's the only disc in my collection that does that. So, oops. So yeah, and anyways, I've been talking, and I did eventually also get Forza 4. which that's another interesting story. When I went to go and get that, when I found that, and also kind of a nice splash crash finish. When I went to get that game, I found a store that had it in stock, and when I went to get an update to make sure they still had it, they took it off, and I was like, why did they take it off? So, because I was curious, I went over to that store to see if there was something up. They had it, and apparently it was because the owner thought the disc was too scratched up to work. I bought it, and it worked. And funny enough, I got Test Drive Unlimited that day as well, and that game didn't work. So I had to get another copy. I had to get another copy of that, and the new copy works. Anyways, that's going to do it for this part. Next part, we will be taking a look at the checkpoint races, so stay tuned for that. So thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.
Well then.